Good morning. Welcome to episode 25 of the Go Gently podcast and episode 1472 of One Other Thing Today. It's lovely to have your company. I'm taking advantage of the fact that it's still nice and cool in my studio this morning. The sun is approaching down the garden and apparently it is going to be a very hot day today, so I suspect I'm going to spend my day chasing the shade. Luckily, the ground floor of our house does stay pretty cool, so maybe I shall nap on the sofa a little later. But before that, I really wanted to record another episode of Go Gently and encourage you to spend 20 minutes with me doing a little bit of work on your current creative project. I am going to still be working on my purple and red socks, though I am nearing the end of them. A few weeks ago, I went to stay in Aberystwyth, the town nearest to where I live. I used to live in town, I used to live near the seafront, but these days I tend to only get in there, well, maybe once a week if I'm lucky, and usually not for very long, just to do a few errands in town. And I thought it would be lovely to spend an extended period of time there, so I found an Airbnb in a basement flat right in the centre of town and had a lovely few days resting, going at my own pace and doing one or two of the things that I used to do when I lived in town. And for today's podcast, I wanted to take you on a short journey doing one of the things that I did while I was there. And it's a ride up the Cliff Railway at the end of town, up Constitution Hill. And it gives it a rather unique perspective of the town, and it would be lovely if you joined me. I shall take you to do that now. It takes about 5 minutes. I shall drink my tea while you're watching that, and then we can meet back here and we can get on with 20 minutes of creative work. I hope you enjoy the journey up the Cliff Railway.
And we're off. I'd forgotten just how exciting this feels. That red brick building in front of us with the bay window and two smaller windows either side is the ticket office. In fact, you can just see the ticket office at the bottom now. But the building above is an apartment and it's rentable. And I've so enjoyed this trip to town, I wonder if I could rent the apartment and stay there next time. Oh look, the view is just starting to appear. That red car, which is just disappearing behind the wall, is parked just outside. In fact, you can see it to the left, the white building. You can just see a front door. That front door was the first door I knocked on when I arrived in town 28 years ago. It belonged to my landlord, and I drove up here and parked just outside and got the key to my room, which is in a hostel, not at the top of this hill, but level with this hill. So I don't know whether we'll be able to see it at the top, but it was the first place I lived here when I moved here 28 years ago. Gosh, the view is looking quite spectacular as we climb the horseshoe of Aberystwyth. You can just make out in the distance the old college and the castle ruins on the part of the horseshoe that sticks out into the Irish Sea there, and the houses along the seafront. This is so steep. I wonder if you're getting a sense of just how steep this climb is. It feels a little bit like my life in Aberystwyth is slowly revealing itself, because I can see a lot of the spots that I lived in. I don't know how to describe it, but 3 blocks of houses in, oh gosh, and that's the car going down, so we're halfway up. Yes, 3 blocks of buildings in front of us. I lived just, you can't see it, but I lived just by the third block for about 5 years. So quite nice and close to the seafront. Should be waving at these people on the bridge, really. We've picked a good day for this, though there is rain on the way, I think, but the sea is looking so clear and so calm. Just tiny, tiny crests of waves, just seeing there out to the left, under the second bridge now. It's such a gentle climb. I used to walk up and down Constitution Hill quite regularly. So over these bridges that we've just come under. And I've not walked up here for quite a long time. Just seeing some foxgloves just starting here in the bank. To the right. Bluebell season is all but over, and foxglove season is beginning. A tiny, tiny town now, stretched out in front of us, and if you look just to the left, that tiny, I don't know if you can just see that little monument on top of the hill, that's Pendinas, which I showed you from the beach just below it before. So maybe you're getting a sense of the geography of the town. And here's the third and final bridge. I have a feeling that when I walk down, you actually only go over 2 of these bridges. I suspect this bridge isn't one that leads down. I think it probably leads over to the side of the hill. So I don't know if I would walk over this one normally. And here we are, getting to the top. I'm going to go and explore. I hope you've enjoyed this little trip up the hill.
There, I've made a start on my crocheting, but I've not set my timer yet. I hope you enjoyed that little excursion up the Cliff Railway. I really have forgotten just how lovely it is to go up there, and I will try and do it again, I think, at some point this year. 20 minutes on the clock. In fact, if I can, I would really love to rent that apartment that I showed you at the beginning of the journey. Maybe out of season, we'll see. I shall start saving. There we are, 20 minutes on the clock. Did I say that already? I'm working still on my my purple socks, and this one just needs the heel, and this one I think I've got one more stripe and then it'll be time to do the ribbing. So with any luck I shall get this purple stripe finished during this session. Though if I don't, it doesn't matter. I really enjoyed my trip to town. It's the second trip to town I've had over the last few months. The last time I stayed in a friend's flat while she was away, and I really wanted to have another trip. I was originally going to be staying in the same flat again, but my friend hadn't been well and she wasn't going away as she planned. So I realised I was a bit disappointed, so I rented the Airbnb that I found, and it wasn't actually very far from the place I stayed in last time. It was a little bit more central. It actually was on the same road, but just further along. And it was a basement flat, which actually when I was there it didn't make much difference, but I think if the weather was like it is now, it would actually feel really lovely. I sometimes long to have a basement here. Last summer was so hot. I don't think this summer is going to be quite as hot, though. These few days that we're going through at the moment are jolly hot, but I'm not sure it's going to last in the same way it did last year. But yes, it would be a very nice retreat. And I did enjoy being there. It wasn't as lovely as my friend's flat, I have to say. I think because hers is a home. It was nice to be there amongst her books and things. But it was a very nice place to stay, and I may well stay there again. But how lovely would it be to stay in that apartment at the bottom of the Cliff Railway? Apparently you also get free tickets for the duration of your stay up the Cliff Railway, so I could go up and down as often as I liked. I could eat in the cafe at the top. I would rather like that, I think. I didn't go in the cafe this time. I actually went off for a walk after I'd got to the top of the hill, and you may have already heard that walk. It's in an episode of One Thing Today. I'm not sure if it's a public one or not, or whether it's just on Patreon. I'm not sure. I think it probably is. I think it probably is a public one. I should put a link anyway to it below this episode of Go Gently, and you can have a listen. I was off hunting for a rather special tree. So I won't say any more about it. You can go and listen to the podcast if you want to know more. It was a walk I used to do quite a lot when I lived in town, but I haven't done it for years and really couldn't remember much about it. I didn't actually walk to the tree that I was trying to find normally, but it was a walk. Most of the route was a walk that I did walk quite a lot once upon a time. So it was lovely to see that, though it had changed. It had changed a bit. So that felt rather like an exciting tiny adventure, and I had hoped to go back and do the journey up again, but I didn't have the energy. In the end, I had planned to the view that you'd seen with the going up the Cliff Railway from one angle. Sorry, I should say, if you're listening to the audio version of this podcast and you actually want to see the view, do go over to YouTube and watch the actual video. It's if you go to youtube.com/Go Gently, I think that's all you need to do to find my YouTube videos. But yes, so the video that you've just seen is just from one angle. Just the view as we ascend up the hill. And I had thought I'd go back and I'd record some extra footage that I could edit together to make it perhaps a slightly more interesting journey up. But actually I decided, well, it was a good thing I did. I decided I quite liked it the way it was. It felt quite sort of slow TV-ish. So yes, I did walk back there my last was it my last morning? I can't remember now. I'm getting a bit muddled about which days I was there. But anyway, I did walk back and see, and I thought I would perhaps go up, but I decided in the end didn't really feel up to it, so I didn't. But I would love to go back and do that journey again, and perhaps go to the cafe for some tea and cake. And so perhaps I will plan another tiny adventure to town to do that. Who knows, perhaps I'll get to stay in town again before the summer's over. But I think that apartment is probably for out of season, looking at the prices of it. But I rather like the idea of staying there November time. I suspect the weather will be quite dramatic. You're just high enough there that if it is stormy, you're safe from flooding. It's up before there's the sea. There's quite a steep climb, and that's where the Cliff Railway starts, and the ticket office and the apartment above. So yes, I think it would feel quite safe. So it would have that lovely feeling of being somewhere in stormy weather that actually feels quite safe. A bit lighthouse-ish, in fact. I have a bit of a thing about lighthouse. I'd love to stay in a lighthouse. But actually, this wouldn't be that dissimilar, actually. staying there. So maybe that is something to aim for. Bit of a frog in my throat, I think. But short stays quite near home work very well for me, I'm discovering. There isn't the exhaustion of a long journey to recover from. I'm already somewhere I'm reasonably familiar with, so that I know I have a rough idea how much energy things are going to take to do. So I'm less likely to overdo things, though I did overdo things during this stay. And I know people about the place too, so it is rather nice wandering around, bumping into people and saying hello to people. That sort of unexpectedness of just bumping into people, which doesn't happen here on the side of the hill very often. So, I mean, even though I didn't plan to do much, it still felt quite a sociable trip, that trip to town. So, and I suppose one advantage of not staying in my friend's flat is that she's probably around too. So I perhaps get to have a cup of tea with her, which I did do this time. So, yeah. So I think I am going to see if I can do it again. And I do think, even if you're very familiar with somewhere, there's something about going and staying there that gives it a slightly different perspective. I felt very much like I was on holiday while I was there. Much more so than I did when I lived there. So, I mean, the things I did do them when I lived in town, but I wouldn't have done them in quite such a concentrated way, I don't think. I mean, I used to go up the cliff railway and I used to go for walks. In fact, I used to walk up the hill. But yes, it was a more conscious decision to do things like that. Another time I might go to the museum. So that would be a very good out of season thing to do. I would enjoy that. In fact, there's a new cafe there. It's probably not that new. It feels new to me. I haven't been in there yet. That's why it probably feels new. There's a new cafe in the museum, and a new shop where I can stock up on postcards, which I did do this time briefly. I just went and bought some postcards, but I didn't go upstairs to the cafe. And the place I was staying was just opposite the museum. That was just very close to everywhere. I mean, Aberystwyth is it's sort of like a pocket-sized town. Most things are within easy distance, and if you're in the centre, everything is pretty much within easy distance. The final place I lived, which I did sort of allude to, I think, as we went up the cliff railway, was right at the other side of town, the south side of town. So it was just a little bit outside town. So if you remember, I told you about Pendinas, which is sort of the mound at the south side of town with a tiny, well, not tiny, looked tiny in the video, monument on top. I used to live just below that. So it was a bit more effort to get into town. The other side of town from there was quite a long way away. So the cliff railway, for instance, would have been quite a way away. But where I was staying, everywhere was in easy walking distance. Anyway, enough of that. How have you been this month? Well, probably by the time you watch this, it'll be next month. I do hope you've been having a good June. I've actually been taking things extra slowly these last couple of weeks. You may know I've been taking some time offline. I had a a complete week offline, which I then extended. And actually today is me emerging from my second week of offline. It's not quite a whole week, just Monday to Friday. It was a good thing to do. I started, well, if you go over to Patreon, there's a video diary of my first week, which you can watch the ups and downs of my attempts to stay offline. But eventually it did work. It worked well, and I ended the week in a very relaxed, peaceful, almost silent place. And I really wanted to extend that silence throughout this week, which largely I have done. It's been a good week. I do actually feel a bit more ready now to do things again, to be a bit more out in the world again. It was interesting. I started the week, if you watch the video diary, I was talking a lot about wanting a slower connection, and that was kind of my intention. So a bit more tea. Excuse me. My intention for the offline week was to try and find this sort of feeling of a slower connection with the world. So the internet often feels very kind of hurried and frenetic, and I often get quite lost in it. And I was really craving something much slower. By the end of the week, actually, I realised that sort of slowness is much more how I just want to be generally. And I think, I'm going to aim at living a much less connected life, but not a completely disconnected one in terms of the internet. But I think sometimes it's really good to be completely disconnected in a way that does give us a lot of silence, an ability to hear ourselves, which is what I found happened at the end of the week. And it was a bit unexpected, actually. And in fact, this week has been a lot less about being online. I have actually dipped in to do things, but it has been much more silent. So it hasn't been about distraction. The internet hasn't been about distraction for me this week. Sometimes it's just been about utility most of the time this week. But I've sat a lot in silence this week, a lot. And that has been very restorative. It's not something I want all the time. I remember saying at the beginning of the video diary that this slower connection that I was seeking is perhaps not something I want all the time, but actually I think it probably is. However, the step beyond that, the sort of sitting in silence, is something I think I want to visit more regularly. A few things have become much clearer this week, and that has been very useful, actually. So, it's been a good experience, and I will definitely do it again. Today I was going to go and have my beard trimmed, and that was sort of going to be my emerging from offlineness, but not been feeling too well the last couple of days, and I just thought it would be good not to have an appointment that I've got to do, so I've postponed that. So today's an empty day, which is good. But nonetheless, I do feel like I'm sort of emerging. So making this episode of Go Gently is a good way, I think, of re-emerging and being a bit more connected. But I do hope I can maintain that sort of slower connection. I've been writing a few letters this week, and sending a few postcards too. Rather than sending a text message to somebody about arranging something, I thought I would send a postcard. I just didn't want to be using screens. I just know that if I do use them too much, I get I get dragged in, and that probably will happen. No, I'm going to be a bit more online again. But I have, as I said, I did a bit of shopping online. Did the grocery shopping online this week, and I just did that, and I closed my laptop. I wonder if it's a bit easier to, don't know, a bit easier not to get caught up on my laptop than it is on my phone or my iPad. I wonder if something about those makes it easier to get lost. I don't know. But I've definitely been avoiding my phone this week. Anyway, all learning. I shall do it again and see what happens next time. I did find it quite hard at the beginning this time. I didn't think I would. I thought I would sort of sink into being offline quite easily, but I didn't. I did find it quite difficult. But this week I've been listening to audiobooks again. And not worrying about that. I suppose that's not a screen thing, and perhaps that makes it easier. I was being very strict, or trying to be very strict in the first week. I just was sort of cutting off anything that was to do with the internet. And this week I've been a bit more liberal about what I used. So yeah, I have been listening to audiobooks in bed this week. Which has been okay. That certainly doesn't drag me down rabbit holes, I don't think. And listening to the radio that way as well. It's just practically easier because the reception here isn't great, and my radio is rather clunky. So it is just easier to play the radio via my Amazon Echo. I don't know. I mean, I wonder if it was good being firmer the first week, because it did shift me into a different place. And I think if we're a bit iffy around the edges of rules, often it just dispels completely. The sort of magic gets broken. So I wonder if some firm boundaries are a good thing, actually. So perhaps it was important that I did that in the first week, which allowed me to be a bit gentler with stuff in the second week. I don't know. Anyway, it was interesting. It was a good thing to do. So do if you're interested, go and watch that video diary over on Patreon. There, that's 20 minutes. I think I've got one more row of purple to do. I shall carry on with that. There. Well, thank you very much for your company. I hope you've enjoyed these 20 minutes. It's been good. It's been good to chat, actually. It's interesting. I haven't got completely formed ideas about either my offline time or sort of trips to town. So it is nice to talk about it a little bit and get the ideas flowing. Take care. Thank you so much for watching. If you do enjoy these video podcasts and you're watching over on YouTube, please do hit the subscribe button and the like button as well. It would be very much appreciated. If you're interested in more stuff, do pop over to Patreon and have a look there. Particularly, I'd be very grateful for any support you can give to the podcast. I am planning to continue with the audio versions of these podcasts at least up until 1500, and I'll perhaps reassess things a little bit when we get there. But I would like to continue if I can. So if you are able to support the podcast, I would be very, very grateful. At the moment, I don't explicitly talk about the One Thing Today podcast over on Patreon, but I'm going to rewrite the tiers on Patreon and explain that the first tier is particularly about supporting the podcast. So if you are a podcast listener and watcher and would like to support it, I'd be very grateful. I'd be very, very grateful indeed. Take care. Have a lovely time for the next week, 2, 3. I don't know. I shall be back with another Go Gently podcast in the fullness of time. Hopefully not too much fullness. And I shall be back with regular episodes of One Thing Today very soon indeed. So do listen out for those as well. Take care. I shall see you next time. Bye bye.
Bye.